everybody, welcome to the weekly news recap, the 14th to the 20th of October 2024. So, this week Xbox had a Xbox Partner Showcase, which is kind of where they kind of show off games that are coming to the Xbox console platform coming up soon from third-party developers, so nothing from their first-party guys. Anyway, first up was Alan Wake 2, the Lake House DLC, which is out 22nd of October, so pretty soon. If you're watching this live, not quite yet, but if you're watching this after the fact, it's probably out by now. This is sort of a crossover between Alan Wake 2 and Control, the other Remedy kind of series. Anyway, we've seen this was shown off during Sony's latest State of Play as well, so we're not going to look into that too much. Chronos: The New Dawn is the next thing from Bloober Team. So Bloober Team currently coming off Silent Hill 2, the remake of it. And this is kind of what they have going on in the works in between. It would have had a smaller team working on this in development, and now that the team has largely moved on from Silent Hill 2, they could be in full-on development for this. So this trailer is not showing off much gameplay. It's kind of just giving you a vibe for the game. I think there is, from the name of it anyway, Chronos, there's probably some time travel elements to it. The trailer itself is kind of cut between two different scenes. It's not clear if this is actually the same scene, just played at different times. The idea here might be that after the chess game, there's an actual fight that breaks out between the two of them. It's just the old lady is not what she seems, as you can see. Or this is kind of like a idea that they are playing a chess game currently in their minds while they're having this fight. Who knows? Anyway, no real gameplay. There's a bit of a Dead Space vibe to it. I haven't played Silent Hill 2 Remake yet, so I don't really know how the gunplay is in that. The Bloober Team haven't done a shootery type game before. Most of their horror stuff has been pretty basic for mechanics wise anyway. It's a lot of just walking and talking. Silent Hill 2 would have been the first time they had like proper combat scenarios. We'll see where they're going with this. There's a tiny bit of what might be gameplay here at the end. Or at least the intention is this is the kind of game they're going for. So they're still going for the over-the-shoulder Silent Hill 2 thing. You know, it's what they've been working on for the last while. Chances are they're just going to keep going with it. Anyway, coming 2025. This is the Xbox Partner Showcase, so it's only going to mention Xbox and PC. But it's also going to be on PlayStation. Anyway, moving on. Blindfire. There's no trailer in the Eurogamer article, but I did find this trailer over on Game Trailers, so we'll watch that instead. Blindfire, it's probably a 5v5 arena shooter type thing. It isn't expressly called out that that's what it is, but I would imagine that is what it's going to be. And the idea with Blindfire is you're essentially playing laser tag. The environment is dark for the most part. There are little power-ups you can find in the environment that kind of, as you can see, give you a bit of an echo thing. Traps you can step on that illuminate you for a brief period of time so people can shoot you easily. There's like big spotlights you can have turned on, and there's these nightlight kind of thing. Not nightlight, what's the thing? Ultraviolet light. That sort of thing. It does remind me of playing Quasar, laser tag, whatever you want to call it. A similar vibe to it. Anyway, it's an interesting concept, but it is also another probably live service team-based shooter thing. See how well it'll actually compete. Anyway, early access is available today on PC. Not sure about Xbox if it's available on that, but it's on PC anyway. Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Again, we had to look at this earlier. It's essentially an in-between game before they get onto the next big Like a Dragon game. Mouse, PI for Hire, had to change its name. Just calling it Mouse was inviting Disney to come after them, so they changed the name or made the name a little bit longer, so now it's Mouse PI for Hire. But you've probably seen a little bit of this before. It's a first-person black and white shooter that has it's a little Mickey Mouse, maybe, not quite, legally distinct, possibly. But more on that, it had been kind of seen that it was mostly just a shooter. but this trailer kind of highlights a little bit that there is some element of like detective work going on in the game as well. Who knows how much of it is just like a very small aside, and most of the game is still going to be a bit Bioshock Infinite, a little bit to it. Anyway, there's a little bit of NPC talking to, and you're taking pictures of crime scenes and what have you. You are meant to be a detective after all. Anyway, that's Mouse PI for Hire, which I think is still 2025. Yeah, 2025. I think that's going to be a recurring theme on the Xbox Partner Showcase, is that very few of these are coming this year. The only one so far that's this year is the Alan Wake DLC, which is potentially already out by the time you're watching this. Anyway, Subnautica 2 is more Subnautica things. It's not particularly my cup of tea, but whatever. Again, it's still early access 2025. Animal Well has been out on PC, PlayStation, Switch for quite a while, so it's just making its way over to Xbox today, the time. So already now. This article was written on Thursday, I think. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Double sneeze. Yeah, Thursday. Anyway, so that's already out. Animal Well. Eden Zero is a anime thing from the people behind Rave Master and Fairy Tail. No idea if the anime itself is any good. I haven't watched it. Eternal Strands we've seen a couple of times now. It's meant to be Mike Laidlaw's next big thing. It's like an adventure crafting open world thing. I say crafting. There's crafting in it. It's mostly a combat, fighting big enemies and big groups of enemies and stuff like that. Anyway, Mistfall Hunter looked interesting until I heard what type of game it was, and then immediately lost all interest. So see if you can figure out what kind of game it is, unless you saw the description there really quickly. Anyway, from the trailer, it looked like it was going to be another Elden Ring type thing. You know, the gods are dead and their corpses are decaying, and the decay has infected mortal man, and people are going crazy, and the world is falling apart, etc., etc. And it looks like it's another like Soulsy type thing, right? Let me get into combat. It's certainly a lot more more visceral and a bit faster. No, visceral maybe not. It's certainly faster than an Elden Ring type thing. And the golden strands and the woman with the blonde hair and so on. It's very Elden Ring, right? That's what it's going for. No, it's an extraction game. Somehow this is a PvPvE extraction game thing. Okay. I'm not getting that from the trailer at all, but that's what they're going for. There's a smaller bit here where it's more of a co-op thing. You've got 3 people fighting this big guy. Maybe 4 people fighting this big guy? There's a guy with a giant hammer somewhere. Maybe the fighter type has 2 weapon slots or something. I don't know. Anyway, 2025 again for that one. But yeah, pretty disappointing when that turned out to be an extraction thing. So yeah, immediately lost all interest in that. Wheel World had a different name a while ago. I forget its old name. It was something Cycle, Soul Cycle, maybe something like that. Anyway, it's got a new name now. It's called Wheel World, but it's still the same kind of general gist of it. Is you're cycling in a somewhat fantasy, somewhat contemporary setting. Race against people online. It does have its own offline component to it, but it is for the most part a cycling game in it, like a big map. A bit more of a sandbox type thing going on with it. Anyway, Wheel World. Phasmophobia has another release date for console. Someday it'll come out. It's like 2 years now it's been trying to do this. Anyway, 29th of October. This one's actually this year. And again, PlayStation and so on. It was meant to be early access on PlayStation last year? Year before last year, maybe? Anyway, someday. The Legend of Babu looks like a pretty standard, kind of old school PS3, PS2, PS3 kind of game. Action-adventure platformer type thing. You've got this pretty cool dog, Babu, the Legend of Babu. It's about him, really, the game. It's not about the kid at all. I mean, you're playing as the kid, and the voiceover is talking to the kid and all that, but no, it's about the dog, obviously. The game is called The Legend of Babu, right? The Legend of Zelda is all about Zelda, not about Link at all. Anyway, it's maybe Princess Mononoke, but maybe not as good. No, it's not. It's not that at all. I don't know. The people look really weird, honestly. They look really... The main character looks fine. It's like everybody else is weirdly proportioned. I say he looks fine. He doesn't look great, but he looks fine. The dog looks amazing. The fur on the dog looks incredible, honestly. Anyway, it does look like a pretty standard action-adventure type thing. Bit of Kena Bridge of Spirits to it. What the actual dog mechanics are, because there are obviously points where you are on the dog, there are points where you're not on the dog. Is the dog always with you? If the dog isn't with you, people should be asking, where is the dog? And so on. Anyway, 2025 for that one. Wuchang Fallen Feathers, we've seen a couple of times. It is another Asian Soulsy type thing. I say Asian, so even though Dark Souls is from Software, our Japanese developer. But anyway, more of a Chinese vibe to it. Gonna start off with a lot of hanging people. But yeah, it's a Soulsy type. Sekiro maybe a bit closer to it. I don't know. We say like Soulsy type games for a lot of these. It's not clear like if it's as punishing as those kind of games. Because you are getting away with a lot of just swiping at the enemy. You're not seeing a lot of punishment in a lot of these trailers, but you got to assume it's there. Anyway, it looks very impressive, but there are a number of other games that have a very similar art design, art direction to them. You know, there's this one, Wushang Fallen Feathers, then there is Phantom Blade Zero, then there's We Were something. There's a fourth one that I can't remember the name of. But there's a lot. There's a lot that have this exact vibe too. Ooh, that's some cleavage there. Right, anyway, moving on. FBC Firebreak is Remedy's multiplayer control game. So they've been working on this one for a while. We did know that it was going to be called Firebreak. We didn't know it was going to be called FBC Firebreak. People who've played Control will know FBC is the name of the kind of government agency that's meant to oversee these kind of SCP things. The Federal Bureau of Control. FBC Firebreak, you're the Firebreak team. You're essentially the guys who are going in to mop up these things when they go wrong. Again, if you've played Control, you'll know that there are these sort of enhanced items. Things like telephones that can contact other dimensions and fridges that can eat people, and there's all sorts of weird shit going on. Anyway, you will be able to use those kind of items in the game as well. I think there's a garden gnome that's effectively a nuclear bomb somewhere in this trailer. It is a 3-person cooperative horde mode Left 4 Dead type thing, I think is what they're going for here. Early access. Yeah, here's the gnome. Fire the gnome, man. Yeah, it's like an area clear thing. Anyway, FBC Firebreak next year, some stage. I skipped too far ahead of it anyway. It's 2025. Anyway, that was it for the Xbox Partner Showcase. A lot of things are next year. You know, not much coming out this year. And of the things that are coming out this year, Animal Well is already out on a bunch of other platforms, and Alan Wake 2 is DLC. So you would have had to already have Alan Wake 2. So yeah, no, that's not great for if you only have an Xbox. It's not great news for you for the end of the year, at least. Anyway, moving on. Those aren't the only updates this week. We also had Bithell Games announcing a new Tron game. So Bithell Games already have a Tron game, Tron Identity, I think it's called, which was a visual novel, somewhat detective-y type game. And then Tron Catalyst is very much not that, but it's definitely using the same art style. Tron Catalyst is a isometric kind of combat game that's using obviously the discs from Tron. For people who might be familiar with the films or some of the TV shows and so on, you throw the disc at people, it bounces off them and comes back. So it's a Captain America boomerang type thing going on. Unless, of course, they have the option that you might be able to catch other characters, other enemies, things, or parry them back towards them and that kind of thing. There's definitely some interesting combat scenarios you could have with the disc. So hopefully they will lean into that. And there's the light cycle, which is also a pretty big deal in Tron. Again, if you're not familiar, this trail that's moving behind people can kill you if you accidentally bump into it, which is exactly what happens here. You cut across them and you hit it and you die. Anyway, cool. I haven't played Tron Identity, but it has been on my wishlist for a while. I do want to get around to play it, and then hopefully before Tron Catalyst is out. Anyway, 2025 for that one. This is XE Killer. This is a pre-alpha thing. This isn't going to be out for another like 7 years or something because it's a single developer working on it, but it looked really cool. So this is a immersive sim. You're playing a cowborg. You stop off at this petrol station to get a drink. There's this like really rare drink, I guess you really want to find, and you come in here to try to find it, and shit happens. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. There are kind of immersive sim elements you see when he picks up the gun. You've got the hotbar at the bottom. There's kind of an immersive UI there with the ammo counter on the back of the gun and that kind of thing. This is obviously, again, pre-alpha. This entire trailer will be heavily scripted for things that are showing up, items that you can pick up and so on. We'll move ahead to some of the combat encounter. He moves ahead to this other petrol station. I think it's a petrol station. Were they 2 petrol stations? Hang on. Is this a petrol station as well? Or is this like a motel reception? I think this is motel. No, that's a petrol thing at the front. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, there's 2 petrol stations on this map for some reason. Anyway, moving on. I think that might be motel reception and this is a petrol station, but whatever. He finds these guys. They've been killed. There's also some cyborgs or robots beside them. Got the mini-map as its own item, which is an interesting idea. It's something you would have to equip. You're not just going to always have it. You can see the HUD is actually very... If they keep going... Again, this is pre-alphas. We don't know if they're going to continue with this, but the HUD is very limited. Minimalist, even. Having everything be in-game, in-world. Your ammo counter is on the gun. Your mini-map is its own item, and so on. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, we're going to skip ahead to combat. He takes out that guy pretty easily. He picked up ammo at some point. It's got a bit of a Fallout vibe to it as well, but I think it does seem to be going for more of a cyberpunk thing. Or a cowboy cyberpunk element to it. Anyway, out of ammo, it's got to switch to melee. I don't know why he didn't stick to melee the whole time, considering he takes this guy out in one shot, but whatever. Anyway, there's a lot of that. Again, this is a proof of concept more than anything else. Finds the drink he was looking for. Calls in the car. The car does look pretty cool. Hopefully, this is a full element of the game and the car isn't just a loading screen. I mean, if it is, fine, but it would be nice if it wasn't. Anyway, that's XE Killer. Who knows when that will actually be playable, if it'll ever be playable. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, a horrible horror game called Toilet Spiders. Anyway, this is from Fulbright Games. This is like a very small miniature game that they've put out. They're looking to do like more of these kind of very small games while they're working on a much bigger game in the background. So this is currently available early access on Steam, and as the game might suggest, you are trying to avoid being killed by toilet spiders. The idea of the game is you're meant to be cataloging, I think, the kind of exclusion event that's going on in this area. And to do that, you need to open up toilets. Who knows why? Don't ask. And then randomly, one of them might have a toilet spider in it. That's all. And if it does, it kills you immediately. That's it. That's the game. I don't know if there's too much of a game to it, but they did say it's very much meant to be a small experience. There are like things you can do to limit or mitigate the randomness to it. You have your Geiger counter. Spiders are meant to emit, like sort of, these toilet spiders are meant to emit some sort of radiation and so on. Anyway, toilet spider kills you. Right, anyway. Horrible. Why did you make me think about toilet spiders? Anyway, other bad news, as well as toilet spiders, is Spiritfarer's 33-player co-op, 33 Immortals, has been delayed into next year. for the usual reason of we just want a bit more time to spend on it. It's meant to be dropping into early access next year, and as we talked about before, and we've mentioned a couple of times now, early access at the time was meant to be a place where you could put out a game that isn't polished, it isn't finished, but we do want to start getting player feedback and stuff like that. And it's now largely grown into just pre-launch. You know, they're not really taking player feedback anymore, or at least the game is now in a state that they can't really make massive changes to the game by the time it's released on early access. It's kind of lost its purpose in a way. In a lot of ways, it just feels like it's more of a pre-release thing. But anyway, 33 Immortals, cooperative game to defeat hordes of monsters, massive bosses in order to rebel against God's final judgment and fight for their eternal lives. Well, you definitely want to make sure that's polished. Anyway, originally due to launch in early access this year at some point, didn't happen. We still want to iron out a few unexpected challenges, address valuable feedback. There was a closed test of this earlier in the year, so potentially they're going for that instead. We do not have a set date for 2025, so 2025 at some point. We don't know when. Free games over on the Epic Games Store this week. Invincible Presents Adam Eve has been on the Epic Games Store freebies a couple of times now. It's a visual novel thing set in the Invincible universe. And the other game is Cardboard Kings, which is a card shop simulator type thing, where you also play the card game itself. I forget what the in-game in-world game is called, but anyway, that's what it is. It's a card shop sim. Xbox, middle of the month, refresh for Game Pass. So bearing in mind that the Game Pass tiers have changed a bunch, the standard tier is obviously getting very little this month. So anyway, you've got the calls of duties, many of the calls of duties. Ashen, which is this kind of like a minimal Dark Souls. Donut County, which is a very funny visual novel. Definitely, if you haven't played it, try it out. It's quite funny. South Park: The Fractured Butthole. Mech Warriors Clans. Sounds like a multiplayer Mech Warrior thing. Dead Island 2, which is also on PlayStation Plus's subscription service. And then StarCraft 1 and 2. StarCraft 1 remastered. I'm not sure if the StarCraft 2 is remastered. But you'll note that of the standard tier, which used to be the regular Game Pass one, that you got all the games, even get day one games like Call of Duty. You're not getting that now. You're getting Ashen, Donut County, and Fractured Butthole, and that's it. If you've managed to push yourself up to the Ultimate tier, you'll get all of the other games that are on this list here. But speaking of that Game Pass tier, maybe you want to push yourself up to Ultimate for Call of Duty, and maybe take advantage of that $1 trial thing just for Call of Duty. Well, fuck you. Xbox thought ahead and said, nope, we're gonna pull the $1, £1 Game Pass trial thing for Call of Duty. They did the exact same thing for Starfield last year, so they very much know that the Game Pass trial thing isn't really a runner, but they're keeping it out there until a big game comes out, and then they rescind it. Anyway, less than 2 weeks before Black Ops makes its debut on Game Pass, they've removed the $1 Game Pass trials. This isn't the first time they've done it. They did it for Starfield before that, and so on, and likely they will do it for Indiana Jones, etc., any of their big day one things. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? You can play Neva. This is a follow-up game. Sorry, not a follow-up. Well, it is a follow-up game, but it's not a sequel. To Gris, which was a really good platformer game. Neva is also a really good platformer game for what I've seen from the reviews and the critical response, and is a mild to decent combat game, but from what I've seen, at least from the reviews, its platforming is where it excels. You are... This character is unnamed character. I think Neva is the name of the wolf, I think. It's not the name of the person. And you are meant to be protecting this sort of wolf spirit, forest spirit thing, as it grows from a pup to an adult, and then to eventually into this like ancient forest spirit or whatever. They seem to age really, really fast. Your character doesn't age very fast at all. But anyway, there are some combat elements, as you've seen. But for the most part, it is a platformer type thing. Anyway, Gris was a very good game, and I imagine Neva will be similarly as good. And Super Mario Party Jamboree, if you know, you have people around for parties or holidays or what have you, and you want to make sure they leave early, you can get them irrationally angry at Mario parties, just random rules and shit. If you played this before, you probably have an understanding of what it is, but it is essentially a virtual digital board game with the Mario characters. You play little mini games. The mini games don't make any sense, and the rules are made up for a lot of points, and even then, the game doesn't really follow them. It's meant to be fun, but if you take anything seriously at all, you are not going to have a good time in Super Mario. But just assume the game is going to cheat you. Just assume it's going to happen. Don't expect it to play fair. Anyway, that's Super Mario Party Jamboree. Unknown Nine's Awakening is very much a double A type game. I think this trailer is entirely CG. I don't think there's any gameplay in it. But the idea with this game is you're some sort of clairvoyant or a medium or something. You have some ability to affect this other realm, and that gives you fancy combat powers where you can jump into people's bodies or telekinetically push them and this kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think this trailer has any actual gameplay in it. Anyway, reviews for it have been a bit middling. It has a bit of performance issues and what have you. But it's impressive enough for what is, I think, the debut game from that developer. Nico DeRico is a kind of throwback to Crash Bandicoot, Donkey Kong Country kind of thing. Very much unironic return to those kind of games. I haven't seen many reviews for it. I think it's kind of gone by a lot of outlets and what have you. It certainly looks fun, depending on how much it costs. I might pick it up. Anyway, it's definitely got a lot of Donkey Kong Country to it. And finally, Retro Realms, Halloween and Ash vs. Evil Dead. It's actually technically two different games, but I think you can buy them as a packaged thing. These are new games that are meant to look like old games. So they're like kind of these old side-scroller brawler things that a lot of licensed games back in the 90s would have been. Terminator, RoboCop had a lot of this. Halloween itself had a lot of this as well. So it's meant to be those kind of games, but like a new, modern, if you like, version of it. Double feature, Halloween is one of them, Ash vs. the Evil Dead is the other one. They are very similar types of games. And if you happen to have both games, there's a bit of a crossover element to it as well. I'm not sure if it's anything more than just you can play as Ash in the other game and you can play as Michael Myers in the other game, but anyway, it's those two games. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, 700 Ubisoft staff in France hold strikes in response to worldwide return to office mandate from Assassin's Creed publishers. So, we knew last month that Ubisoft were pushing for a 3-day return to office thing, and for everybody in Ubisoft. So that includes their developers in Canada, it includes their developers over in Asia, Singapore, and in France. And France don't take kindly to any kind of labor bullshit. So yeah, French Video Game Workers Union has said this decision was made without any tangible justification or any consultation with the workers' representatives. The union has called for workers to hold a 3-day strike beginning yesterday, which would have been Wednesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they've been on strike. The union reports to be underway. Participation of more than 700 workers. This decision is announced immediately after the failure of the profit-sharing negotiations. So they've been in talks with Ubisoft higher-ups to like pay their people better for the work that they do and not just keep all of the money for yourselves. And as is usual, they said no. Anyway, exactly like previous salary negotiations, management's proposals were unacceptable, the negotiations timetable was appalling, and management was deaf to the proposals of the various employee representatives. After more than 5 years of working efficiently in the current remote work context, many of our colleagues have built or rebuilt their lives and simply cannot return to the previous working conditions. Our employer knows this perfectly well. Consequence of its decision will be the loss of our colleagues' jobs, the disorganization of many game projects, and the drastic increase in psychosocial risk for those who remain. This is, of course, them talking about soft layoffs, essentially. It's companies having this return to office mandate, knowing full well that some employees won't or simply will just refuse to do it. And they will quit instead of being fired or laid off. And that obviously is cheaper for Ubisoft in the long run. They're expecting people to essentially voluntarily lay themselves off by not coming into the office. Anyway, there's more here from the union itself, talking to Ubisoft and how this return to the office is breaking promises made to staff. That calls into questions the way they've organized their lives. The union itself demands formal agreement on remote work, an increase to all salaries, and that upper management actually listening to employees' opinions. Management seems indeed to confuse monologue with dialogue. Burn. That's a sizable burn there. Earlier, talking to Ubisoft staff, Le Monde, which is like the paper of note in France, interviewed anonymously with staff that the atmosphere at Ubisoft was gloomy. Staff are disillusioned and feeling as though they aren't being listened to, which is obviously clear with this whole remote return to office bullshit. Anyway, that's not the only studio in France feeling the brunt of the French. We also have Dontnod. So Dontnod, go to the original story first. Dontnod are suggesting that up to 69 Nice jobs being eliminated. We were talking last week about their weak financials and how Banishers, Ghost of New Eden didn't do great, and Jusant, most people just flew under the radar for them. So they've posted disappointing first half earnings, and I would look at them and go, they seemed fine. Didn't really see what the issue was. It's lower, sure, but they were still fine. Anyway, leaders are committed to fostering a dialogue with employees about how we can come back to a better yada 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 whatever. No, they're not. Basically, is the union's position. French Game Development Union, STJV, the same guys from the last story. That Dontnod's potential layoffs are essentially the climax of a series of catastrophic decisions denounced for a long time by workers' representatives. So they've been telling them that this was going to happen a long time and you just wouldn't listen to your employees. Dontnod exhibited red warning lights for months. There's claims of mismanagement first reported all the way back in February. You'll note it is October now. Anyway, mismanagement was reportedly due to an earlier reorganization effort that has clearly now, a year later, this has proven to be disavowed and useless, exactly as we had predicted. The union said that both it and Dontnod cannot tolerate the blame for the company's failures being placed on its employees. Thank you. They established the balance of power necessary to save our jobs. There is no question of paying for the mistakes of our bosses. So they are also suggesting strikes on that element of thing. Now, you can look at that and just say France and strikes as synonymous, and they are somewhat synonymous with each other. But also, shit's not gonna change if you don't make it change. They are right, even if it is somewhat of a stereotype. Anyway, we'll see how it comes out from that. 3-day strike with Ubisoft would have just wrapped up on Friday, so it'd be Monday, the week after. We'll see how that's working out for them. And with Dontnod, if they go ahead with those layoffs, or if they come to some agreement that maybe you just do one layoff and it's the CEO who made all those decisions. Yeah? Probably save you just about as much money. Anyway, moving on. So Sean Layden was over in Gamescom Asia. There's a bunch of different articles from his kind of fireside chat here with, I think it was a marketing guy from Devolver? No, Raw Fury. Same. It's not quite the same. Co-founder of Raw Fury, a chief publishing officer, not marketing. Gordon Van Dyke was talking to Sean Layden. It's like his fireside opening chat thing at Gamescom Asia. There's a couple of different outlets have a couple of different articles about this, so I have two of them that kind of cover both, or cover the interview in general. So Sean Layden, if you are unfamiliar, was formerly Sony executive in charge of PlayStation. After him would have been, so before him would have been Shuhei Yoshida, or Yosp, who's still there, who's kind of somewhat pushed to the sidelines. He's kind of trying to champion the indie side of video games, but he's largely just not listened to, which is really disappointing. Anyway, Sean Layden came in after him when they moved the HQ from Japan over to the US, which is, I would argue, probably the beginning of their mistakes. But Sean Layden at least kind of understood, as you'll see in this article, kind of understood where video games get most of their creativity from, and where they get their passionate fan bases from, and so on, and so where they get paying customers from, essentially. He would have been somewhat instrumental in the PS4 being so successful. And then after him, Jim Ryan. And well, anyone who's watched this show or my channel long enough knows how much I fucking hate Jim Ryan. And then after that, it's Herman Hulst and some other people. Anyway, Sean Layden would have been around the transition from PS3, PS4, and then the second half of PS4, essentially. So first up, it was thoughts on the disappearance of AA Studios. These would have been the people responsible for kind of middle-of-the-road games, but they would have also been a little bit more creative. And a lot of their ideas would then get pulled into AAA games and maybe better refined and better polished, or they just be acquired and then quietly shut down, which tends to be what happens now. Anyway, we asked a simple question, or basically in the before times, before people started talking about revenue plans and monetization and all that shit, we used to just ask, we asked a simple question: is it fun? Are we having a good time? If you said yes to those questions, you usually get a green light. Now it's more of a case of risk tolerances and how are you going to make back the money and what have you and so on. At the moment now, we have the finance guys who draw the line and say, well, if Fortnite made this much money in this amount of time, my Fortnite knockoff is going to make this much money in this amount of time, which obviously doesn't happen. Because we have Fortnite already. We don't need another one. It's there. It's established. And even that's not making as much money as it used to. They went back then to talk about indies. Van Dyke obviously being with Raw Fury, he would have been more pushing for indie stuff and that kind of thing. Whether they can be seen as a beacon of hope when it comes to creativity and creativity first and monetization second, if at all. Sean Layden kind of agreed, saying that most of the creativity is coming from the indie scene, and since we don't have the AA scene anymore, and AAA games cost so much to make, and we'll get into that in a second, they're not taking any risks, and a lot of AAA games are just the same game over and over again. So all of the creativity and the risk-taking is coming from the indie scene. He had this kind of analogy of kind of middle-of-the-road films, that they weren't like these big blockbuster things, and they weren't like small independent art house things. You kind of had rom-coms and comedies and what have you, middle of the road action films, that kind of thing. And used to get people would come out to cinema and watch them, they would help the movie industry and what have you, but they've largely disappeared from the cinema and have instead made their way over to like Netflix or Apple Plus or Disney Plus or what have you. But the same thing is kind of happening with video games, but they don't have anywhere to go. So like the people who would have been like THQ Nordic, Don't Nod, Focus Interactive, Focus Entertainment, those kind of people, they're kind of finding it difficult to get the money to make those kind of games and the audience for it as well. They don't have somewhere to fit in, right? So the AA games, it's costing them too much and they're not making enough back, but they're also looking at it's costing us too much and we're trying to do the AAA thing, be risk averse and make a similar game. We'll make what is he likens it here to something else. It's like, if we're just going to rely on the blockbuster to get us through, I think that's a death sentence. That's again relying on just having the AAA games because they're not making as much money as they used to as well. So if the AA games want to survive, they'll have to bring in a new thing and not just the dollar store version of God of War. So again, when God of War came out at the time, there were a bunch of AA studios who tried to just make their own version of it and it didn't go well for them. And now with, again, games being more expensive, yada yada, more expensive to make, it's really executive pay that's more expensive, but whatever. They're obviously going to be risk averse because it costs a lot of money. So they're going to try to make the thing that's already making money, which is why you're seeing so many 5v5 shooters and hero shooters and extraction things and what have you, because they made money in the past. Surely they'll make the money now. They don't have the money to make a massive open world GTA thing. And even if they did, they don't have the skill to do it. They don't have they can't command the employee salary for something like that. So instead of trying to make the dollar store version of some big, massive thing, come up with a good quirk a good mechanic that you haven't seen before, or a game, just an entire game type you haven't seen before, or you want to see more of, and try to work with that. Don't lead with monetization is more a case of, if you're going to start leading with monetization, you're just going to start looking at the games that make all the money. And you'll just make another one. And you'll saturate the market that is already saturated. There's a brief thing here about AI, but people who think that AI is going to revolutionize games are usually not people in the industries, people who just don't understand how the technology works or how video games work in general. Creativity is the hard part, and generative AI, by its very nature, cannot be creative. The last bit is kind of aimed more at Gamescom Asia, because they are in Asia, talking to developers from that market, and essentially saying, don't just cater to the Western market. It's not the be-all and end-all. Diversity is the best part. Creativity is the best part of the video game industry, and it should be catered to more. And then there was a small follow-up thing that wasn't covered in that article, but was covered in later ones, talking about the arms race of the different consoles. The console power arms race has plateaued. Consumers are no longer interested in marginally more powerful machines. He had another good analogy. See if I can find it. Anyway, they're talking about how, how video game development has been done the exact same way for 30 years, and all that's happened is it's just gotten more expensive, and you just can't keep doing it. It's time for a real hard reset on the business model, a hard reset on what it is to be a video game, and he's going in talking about how every game is trying to be 80 hours and 90 hours, and it's just not necessary. Shawn Layden, in particular, has been more of an advocate for much shorter games, or like the 10-hour, 12-hour game, or shorter even than that. Find a feckin' analogy. Oh yeah, here it is. We're at the stage of hardware development that I call only dogs can hear the difference, which is essentially, can you even tell the difference between 8K and 4K upscaled to 8K? Like, it's imperceptible. You'd need to be in a dark room, all the lights off, have your TV perfectly calibrated to be able to tell any small imperceptible differences we're seeing with PS5 and PS5 Pro. You can't really tell any difference. And then the last one was, the race is nearly over, console power race thing, and you know who won? AMD. Exactly. That's kind of the same analogy for, who won the gold rush? The people who sold the pickaxes. It wasn't the people who found the gold. It's in a similar vein to, the hot tech topic du jour, AI, and then before that it was blockchains, and then before that it was Bitcoin, and so on. The only people who made money out of that was Nvidia, because they sold the chips. Nobody else did. Anyway, same deal. We're not going to see any massive graphical differences going forward, barring the huge breakthrough. Quantum computing, maybe, which is in 50, 60 years from away, if at all. Anyway, finally, the last thing, and this is more of a bugbear of mine that I've brought up a number of times now, but anyway, Sony announces PlayStation Concert Arena Tour starting next April. And it just really frustrates me that these are the only games they're going to be playing the music from. The same 4 games that they've been talking about for what feels like 20 years now. Nothing else. You have other games. You have other games with incredible soundtracks. Bloodborne, Demon's Souls, Returnal, Parappa the Rapper. I mean, it probably doesn't play well in an orchestra, but still, good music. No, the same 4 games. They're just going to keep doing it. That's it. This is the only games we have now. Anyway, they do say "and more" somewhere in this tweet. God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, The Last of Us, and more, but nowhere, anywhere in their marketing, PR, or anything does it state what the more is. The only ones that are ever mentioned are those 4 games. Anyway, it is coming to Dublin in April. I might go, just so I can know for definite what the more was. If they actually remember what their other games are. Anyway, Bloodborne soundtrack is incredible. The Demon's Souls soundtrack, both the original and the remaster. I know people get angry about some of the changes the remaster made, or the remake made. It's still really good music. No, just the Western devs. Just the Western devs for me. Okay. Anyway, moving on. What's going on in the community? Square Enix are swinging their legal dick around, basically. So, Yoko Taro Fan Archive shutting down following Square Enix cease and desist. The website will remain open until the end of the month, so they've been contacted by the Square Enix legal team and they've been told to basically shut the thing down. We're sad to have to go. We also must respect the wishes of the legal team. You really don't. You really don't have to do that, but I get that they're not exactly going to have the money to deal with it. We started with the goal of gathering and archiving as much side materials and merch as possible, but since then our ambition grew and we decided to create a full-fledged website that will also include news articles, lore, summaries, translations, transcriptions. This sounds an awful lot like a wiki. That is perfectly fine and legal, and almost every game ever released has one. Hopefully one day we will be up there in the list of notable resources for Drakengard and Nier fans. Well, unfortunately you won't, because Square Enix are swinging their dick around anyway. The site itself is pretty impressive. It's kind of collected a lot of the merchandising and key art of Drakengard and Nier and Sino Alice and a bunch of other things that Yoko Taro has worked on. And a lot of things that Square Enix just don't go out of their way to market or remind people of, or try to remaster or put them onto different consoles or put them onto different platforms or anything. Drakengard is still incredibly difficult to get playing on anything. Anyway, there's a couple of pages here of some novellas. A lot of it is just marketing key art and stuff like that. You can go through the various different games. Like I said, it's a pretty impressive website. It's much better than a lot of other wikis, wikias, and fandoms and what have you going on with it. There's a bunch of stuff from Nier in particular, like these novellas and the collaborations and the concert and stuff that are actually important to the story. They tell like some important context that never made it out of Japan. Western, at least, fans would have had no idea about it unless these kind of fan websites had existed. Anyway, it's pretty disappointing that Square Enix is taking that approach to it, but it's modern Square Enix. What are you gonna do? Alright, anyway, I'm gonna leave Neva to play in the background. Is it looping? Yes, it is. Okay. Anyway, that's your news for the 14th to the 20th of October 2024. We had the Xbox Partner Showcase that basically showed that it doesn't have anything for the rest of the year. At least in terms of third parties, a lot of it is going to be 2025 at best. Sony's State of Play was much the same. It's like stuff that's coming out next year instead. The games that are going to be coming out at the end of the year, their marketing is mostly ramping up and they're kind of dealing with that themselves. Having said that, what actually is coming out? I know, like, Soul River is basically the only one I'm really interested in, but are there any, like, big AAA games coming out before the end of the year now? I'm looking at my calendar. Not really? Yeah, not really. Call of Duty, I suppose, but I don't give a shit about Call of Duty, so that's not for me. But otherwise, not really. A lot of them have pushed into next year, so the Christmas market's going to be a bit strange, I guess. Anyway, XE Killer looked pretty interesting, but again, I don't think it's a solo dev, but I think it's a very small team, indie team, so that's at least 8 years away if it ever comes out at all. Toilet Spiders, again, something I never wanted to even think about. Thanks very much for that, Fulbright. Appreciate it. How am I ever going to shit ever again? Anyway, the Xbox Game Pass refresh is notably terrible for the standard tier this time around. It's a lot for games that were already on the pass multiple times. Not that those games are bad. The games are good. Ashen is a decent game, particular. As is Donut County. It's a very funny game. But it's notable in that, like, they're big Call of Duty, the whole reason they bought Activision in the first place, and now you need to, buy the extra tier, the ultimate tier of Game Pass. And not only that, you got to do it for full price. You can't do the trial because they took the trial away because they knew exactly what they were doing. Anyway, it's pretty disappointing behavior, but not exactly surprising behavior. the push for the French Union to go after Ubisoft and Don't Nod is very important and should be supported as best that people can. Ubisoft themselves are trying to, or at least it seems like they're pushing to go back into a more of a private enterprise, which will obviously make unionizing even more difficult. But yeah, that kind of thing needs to change. There needs to be a pretty strong social change around software development in general, not just video games. Software development in general does need to have a robust union element to it, and it just doesn't really have that. That's why you're seeing a lot of tech layoffs. There's no pushback against it because there isn't a concerted industry-wide union to deal with it in most countries. Sean Layden, I guess that, you know, rose-colored glasses somewhat because Jim Ryan followed him, and Jim Ryan was absolutely cancerous for PlayStation in general, in my opinion. So yeah, somewhat rose-colored glasses for Sean Layden, but I think I agree with a lot of what he said there. That if things are just starting to cost more money, that you're going to be more risk-averse. Which is why you're seeing a lot of AAA games are playing it incredibly safe the last while, not really innovating a huge amount, trying to just keep pushing the thing that used to make the money, which was graphical fidelity. For a long time, that's what separated AAA from a AA or indie and what have you, was that their production values were way higher. But they're not seeing the same kind of return on investment now for that kind of thing. And you're also not seeing the same kind of jump in graphical fidelity anymore. Very small amounts, you know, amounts only dogs can hear, as he said. Like, they're going to need to change how they're doing things, and it doesn't look like they're going to, because it was, you said, Sony celebrating the music of PlayStation, and it's the same fucking 4 games they've been talking about for the last who knows how long. It seems like 20 years. It's obviously not 20 years, but it seems like that's all they've been talking about. Anyway, it's pretty disappointing. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Normally I talk about things going on the channel, but nothing's really been happening. I wanted to do Steam Next Fest this week, but I didn't get around to it. It's just too busy. And there weren't, to be honest, there weren't too many games that looked really interesting. One of them, My Arms Are Longer Now, was very funny. It's this idea of this guy, a thief, who just has one really massive arm. Maybe 2 really massive arms. I don't know. The demo, you only had 1. And you sort of wiggle your arm around the environment and grab things and steal them. And it plays out a bit like Untitled Goose Game. I just thought it was hilarious. I just thought it was really funny and really well put together. The demo was really short, unfortunately, but I thought it was a very funny game. There's one other, but I don't remember the name of it now. Archons. It was kind of Vampire Survivors, but you are controlling 2 characters at the same time. So one character on your left analog and the other character on your right analog, and that's hard. That's hard to do. Bullet hell with trying to control 2 characters at once is a bit of a nightmare. Anyway, I thought that was, again, interesting concept. Difficult, but I would love to see like high level play of something like that. I imagine it's pretty impressive. Anyway, I might try to put a video together before Steam Next Fest finishes. I probably won't do a stream of it because it's quite late now on a Sunday and Steam Next Fest finishes tomorrow. So I'll try to see what I can put together. Might just do a quick blast, like a 10-minute video, and here's some of the games I liked. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day. I'll hopefully be back streaming on Tuesday, but as you've seen, seasonal affective disorder is kicking my ass. And it gets pretty difficult after work to have the motivation, even during work, to have the motivation to do things. Anyway, yeah, whatever. Mental health has not been going great, so that's why you haven't been seeing many streams. Anyway, hopefully I'll try to push my way into that next week, and we'll get back to Hollow Body and continuing on our big wall of games. Anyway, let me know what you thought about this video and such and other things. Did you play any Steam Next Fest? Did anybody even make it this far in the video? If you did, comment peanut or something in the YouTube. That'll prove it, I guess. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully see you on Tuesday. Bye.